Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth, and I will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we are talking about how to leave a legacy, an employee stock ownership plan. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, an e-commerce and web development firm, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, and Voyager U. I encourage our Club E community to explore professional independence by joining Voyager University. Voyager U is an online community where professionals learn, explore, and support one another and learn about the independent economy. Here you can find lessons, lead, resources, and the people you need to thrive independently, all in one place. Again, that's Voyager U. To participate in the comments section, make sure you're watching on YouTube. And while you're there, please hit the subscribe button and hopefully the like button as well. We need that help because that will allow us to deliver better content to you, as well as let you know when we are going live. You can also now catch Club E on your favorite podcast platform. All right, with that, I want to introduce today's guest. Welcome, Philip Mattison. Philip is president of Core Products International. Again, welcome, Philip.
Well, thank you, Rick. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And Philip, we appreciate you joining us. I know you and I have had several conversations outside of Club E. Welcome to Club E. Appreciate you sharing your time with us. So let's start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your firm, and the various things you're up to.
Well, I have a really perfect background for being in sales and healthcare products. When I was going to college at the University of Minnesota, my mother said I was majoring in fraternity. Well, that was back in the days of Animal House, and as you can imagine, there were several of us that didn't graduate. So I had a friend, one of my fraternity brothers, whose father was the senior driver for one of the Allied Van Lines agencies. And so at some point, I bothered my dad for some help with a loan, and I bought a tractor trailer and hit the road. So as a truck driver hauling, I referred to myself as a household relocation engineer, meaning I was working for Allied Van Lines carrying people's furniture. But everybody else I knew was getting a cool title. But what I learned in that is I learned the importance of business and presenting myself, and that I was the face of the business to the customer. And all of a sudden I learned that all of that accounting that I just hated dealing with in school was very relevant as well. At some point, I hurt my back and blew the truck up because I bought an old truck. I couldn't afford a new truck. And so there I was with a truck that was spilling oil and everything all over the road, and thinking about, should I buy another truck or should I pursue something else? And I walked into the chiropractor's office wearing a suit and tie. And he said, "What are you all dressed up for?" And I said, "Well, I'm looking for a sales job." And he said, "Well, I've got an idea for a product that chiropractors would use." And at that time, he had an idea for one of the first contour cut orthopedic pillows. And so I, having been thrown out of college, thought, well, maybe I'm better off looking for an opportunity than I am looking for a job. And so I started helping him develop that first orthopedic pillow. We worked together and built that company up over a period of about 7 years to, what turned out to be a little over $1 million in sales, which is probably 2 million in today's dollars or more. And at some point, he and I had a falling of the ways. He had quite a bit of a drinking problem, and it was causing lots of issues, as partnerships can have issues with different personalities. And I left that company and started over and started Core Products. And so Core Products today is probably 33, 34 years old. We manufacture a wide variety of orthopedic supports and soft goods. We sell them traditionally through distributors who sold to dealers, and then ultimately to a professional who would dispense the product to a patient. But we also do contract manufacturing. About 20% of our total business is contract manufacturing. So today we're about 140 employees.
And I'm just curious, with that many employees, how many products do you carry?
Wow, our stock keeping unit count is well over 1,100 stock keeping units, simply because every item is large, medium, and small, and many of them are in 2 different colors. And so we've got a lot of products.
And the which we'll get into later, the Esop, but with the 140 employees and about $20 million, correct?
Yes, sir. In fact, this last year we broke the $20 million mark for the first time. Very proud of that.
Right. Well, congratulations. So
Thank you.
just surviving 30 plus years with one entity by itself is quite a feat. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And obviously a lot of growth since that early year. And what, if you look back now over those 30 plus years, what do you see as the keys to the growth?
Well, the key to growth originally was that we chose to be a big fish in a small pond. And so as I started looking at what we were doing, I realized that, there were 50 to 60,000 chiropractors, and you could get to know those people pretty well. At the time, trade shows were popular, the relicensing procedures were popular. You had to go to the annual meeting or some sort of a meeting within your state in order to get your licensing time. And so you could get to know the doctors and the distributors that called on them. And of course, back in that day, the distributors were jobbers that ran around in trucks with a variety of products and some tools, and they repaired the equipment that the doctors had, and they provided them with their supplies. So it didn't take long before I figured out that the real job was selling to those distributors and having them sell directly to the doctors.
And then what about on the product side? How have you evolved the products over the years?
Well, because I was partnered with this doctor in the early days, I had a pretty good idea as to what products he was selling and why, and what kind of volume he was doing in which products. And so I started with one orthopedic pillow and continued to increase the selection of that style of product, as well as several of the other products that he consumes. So today we make back belts, everything from head to toe, starting with a neck collar, a cervical collar, a shoulder brace, elbow brace, wrist brace, back belts, knee products, you name it. We've got pretty much everything that they could potentially dispense to a patient. Now, we don't do the custom made stuff. Our stuff is the thing they would pick off the shelf, large, medium, or small, black or white, and dispense that.
So over a long enough time horizon, and I think 30 plus years qualifies for that, you've clearly seen a lot of changes. If you were trying to identify the top one or two most significant changes over that time period, what would that have been?
Well, the most significant change over that time frame was back in the day when we started, insurance paid for everything. Your insurance cost dramatically less, and it reimbursed for almost everything. So if there was a code for a carpal tunnel wrist brace, you sold wrist braces by the dozen. If there was a code for a cervical collar, you sold cervical collars by the dozen. As time went on, we found that the insurance companies paid for less and less and less. And in fact, today, the insurance companies hardly pay for any of these ancillary products anymore. If you go and get an abdominal surgery, an abdominal belt to help bind that surgery isn't even available unless you pay for it cash today. So the world started to change, and the doctors went from buying products by the dozens and dispensing, to, if you had a neck injury or a cervical injury, they dispensed a selection of products to everybody that had that. If you had a low back injury, same deal. Well, over a period of time, that got slower and slower. So what we saw that a number of different companies were struggling, and in some cases they were going out of business. And if they were struggling, well, then we'd kind of find out about it, and I'd buy some of those companies. So I made my selection of products wider and wider, because if I stayed with my original narrow selection, my sales would have declined. So we had a pretty good run over the last many years. We've purchased up to 14 other small companies.
And I think we'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward. Hey, a reminder to our audience out there to submit your questions into the comments field. If you'd like to ask Philip a question, I will try to weave those into our conversation. Again, you need to be on YouTube to submit your questions. Similarly, while you're there, please hit the subscribe button, as well as hopefully the like button. so you made a bunch of acquisitions over the years, grew the company, 140 employees, 20 plus million. Couldn't have been easy, couldn't have been straight, in the sense of there must have been a few challenges along the way. If you're trying to identify the top one or two challenges that you experienced over that time frame, what would those have been?
Well, our sales growth over the years would be steep sales growth followed by periods of flat sales, and then steep sales growth followed by periods of flat sales, simply because the market was changing so fast. So we had to learn to sell to other people other than chiropractors. And so soon we were selling to physical therapists, massage therapists, home health care dealers, and so forth. But our start was clearly with the chiropractic crowd. And and then the market started to change with that loss of insurance reimbursement. And so although our relationships were all built very much using a sales model, I soon realized that we had to speak to a much wider audience, and we had to learn to build our business around a marketing model, not so much a sales model. And so building awareness was the first thing, and I didn't even realize that I was building awareness. I just realized I was seeing a larger audience. And at some point, as we started to transition to selling direct to the consumer, so back in the day, the trade shows in our catalog that we physically handed out was the essence of what created our sales, and then we would provide the tools that the professional would use in his office to educate people about our products. Well, then that gave way, obviously, to the internet and a digital catalog, and soon we were also starting to use some of the tools that are popular today, like Amazon and about 30 other websites that currently sell our products. So we had to learn to move from a sales model to a marketing model, and then we had to learn to develop fulfillment. And the hardest part of the whole fulfillment thing was getting to the point where we could comply with all of the nexus laws. So the nexus is the laws that require you to collect sales tax in states that are deemed by whatever their local rules are, that you have a presence within that state. So one year at one point, 7 years ago, I suppose, we took a full year off of our direct response marketing efforts just to build out the nexus sales tax compliance methods that were necessary for us to do fulfillment. Today, our direct to the consumer sales are about every bit as big as, or maybe even slightly stronger than my sales through the professional. And I think what happens is we have a number of professionals that just don't choose to carry the products anymore. Instead, they refer their patients directly to our website.
That is a complete transformation of your business. Amazing.
Yes, and it was a difficult choice to say we're going to walk away from these sales for a period of time. But had we not done that, we would have been building quite the case for non-compliance of sales tax rules. So we had to shut it all down and get there. And it was interesting because we did that well in advance of the rules changing. At the time we did that, there were no uniform rules for collecting sales tax. And there are now much more uniform rules, but they are not uniformly complied with. I'm proud to tell you that we comply very, very well.
And to build a company of your size with the number of employees, what does the management team look like?
Well, so we have a leadership team. We are members of the traction discipline. And so we have a very well-defined accountability chart with the leadership team. So myself, plus a sales and marketing manager, a controller, engineer, plant manager, and then we have a longtime employee that sits as our assistant to the leadership team. And she's actually a leadership team member as well. And she helps us with all of our compliance and our level 10 meetings and annual meetings and all of that good stuff. And she has a vote on our leadership team as well. So I try to manage the business, even though I own the vast majority of the stock. I try to manage the business as though everyone on the leadership team has an equal vote. And I am very much inclined to not trump that leadership team's capacity to vote on a variety of topics.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing, given the growth and the transition to a D2C model, direct to consumer, what from a marketing standpoint, you said you had to go away from the sales to the marketing side. you had to say, hey, here's one or two or three kind of key marketing things that you've established over the years, what would those be?
Well, over a period of time, we had a number of salespeople that retired. And when those folks retired, we did not replace our salespeople. What we did is we built a stronger and stronger marketing team. So I had written a vision at the beginning of the company that someday I would have all those various assets in-house. And so today I have about 6 people on our marketing team that handle all of our listings, our online sales, our website and all of that. And I do use an outside source for the actual development of my websites, but the management of them and the images and the copy and the video and all of that's done pretty much in-house. And we do really good work.
Actually, I do like your website.
Thank you.
Yes, you do good work. You mentioned acquisitions. Did you say you'd made like 14?
Yes, over a period of time, I made 14 different acquisitions. Now, I will tell you that sounds pretty impressive, but 7 of them were probably maybe 8 were probably a complete waste of time. And so the other half were ones that made a significant difference in our business, where we picked up some significant capacity or some sales. And my big strategy when I'm doing an acquisition today is to make sure that I'm buying something that has a brand that is well thought of within our narrow marketplace. And so once I buy that, then I want to control the brand, because what I learned is that the distributors who had been my partners and had done a large portion of our brand management in the early days just don't quite do that the same way that they used to. And so if we want a lot of attention from distribution, then we have to be in control of the brand, and we have to set the tone for what's going to happen and what the specials are going to be and what's going to get promoted. And then, of course, communication is the key. If you want your brand management partners to be effective, then you have to communicate to them very well what you're doing and why. And they like to cooperate because it makes their job easier. So we can provide through our web services, we can give them all the photos they need, all the alternative graphics they need, the copy. We can make sure that in fact, our marketing department, if they give us the format and they need a half a dozen pages of our products in their book, we'll literally build the pages and send it to them for final edits. So the goal is to make yourself much easier to do business with than how easy it is to do business with your customer, and you almost always win.
Sure. So you mentioned that roughly half of those acquisitions were a waste of time. Why do you think that was the case? So what did you learn from the acquisitions that did not work out?
We were buying the wrong asset. It took a while to learn that you needed to do a deal that was big enough to be worth the time and effort. It's not about the dollars. It's really more about the time and effort. And so if I had somebody come to me with a little product line that had 2 widgets in it, and they did $250,000 in sales, and they were going to close it up and walk away from it. Well, I was hungry. I would buy that deal for a small royalty or a little bit of cash, but it would take just as much time to assimilate whatever that widget was into our product line and make it available and so forth and so on, as it was when I did a deal at a later time in the future where it was $2.5 million in sales. And so the smaller ones, although some of them we still have active products, some of them we don't, but they just weren't what they would have been had we focused on buying a little bit bigger deals.
Okay, that makes sense.
I bet you've had that same experience with some of the things you've done.
Absolutely. And so part of the learning was not just about the other companies, but part of the learning was about you, yourself, the company, etc. So there was kind of an external focus with some of these learnings, but then also an internal one.
Absolutely. The biggest part of it was learning internally how to do diligence, how to build a due diligence checklist. Now we're at the point where we look at acquisition opportunities with confidence that we can do those well. And of course, we understand that if you're interested in doing acquisitions, you need to keep nice, clean books yourself, and you need to build your cash and pay off your debt, because if an opportunity comes around, cash is king. And you can't take advantage of an opportunity if you haven't focused on building your cash. And then, of course, once you do make an acquisition, the first and most important thing that you can do in that acquisition is focus on how do you repair the culture as it relates to the employees, but also as it relates to the customers and the customer's experience.
So for the listeners out there, Philip, why don't you tell everybody kind of what's an ideal product and spec of a situation? So who knows, maybe there's somebody that might hear or see us today, and they might reach out to you. What's a good acquisition target for you?
Well, at the moment in our basic product lines, we have very good coverage for all the orthopedic designed products. What I'm actively looking for at this time are some product lines that would be much more consumable, that would be of interest to the same customer. So if we could pick up a widget that somebody bought once a month or once every other month, say a vitamin or an analgesic or something along those lines that would be more highly consumed. If I'm selling you an orthopedic pillow, although I'm quite confident that my orthopedic pillows are some of the best made, and they're nothing like the pillows that you see regularly on TV being offered. Our products are designed to support your neck in the proper curve and help restore some kind of a neck injury, usually loss of the cervical curve. And our pillows are very, very well made. But you only buy one every so often, right? I mean, that's not very often because they're good products. And so I'd like to have some items that would keep us in front of the customer more frequently, so that we're on the top of their mind. And so I'm looking for consumable items at this time.
Okay, well, you might have done a double dip here with your effort, because I have an idea for you. So I'll call you after our session.
Good.
So again, reminder to all the listeners and viewers out there, if you want to go into the comments field of YouTube, you can submit a question. We'll try to weave it in if we can. So Philip, you mentioned earlier in our talk today about peer groups. So we're big fans of peer groups here at Club E. In fact, we're partners in MinBig. Website's www.minnbig.com. Again, minbig.com. I know from talking to you in the past, as well as your comments earlier today, you're one of the original members in the Inner Circle. You then later went on to participate in Vistage for many years, and then the executive group for several more years. What impact did your participation in these peer groups have on your business, but then also on you personally?
Well, you know, I was having a lovely conversation the other day with Jeff Redmond from MinBig, and he's a sharp fellow, man. He really understands what small business people are looking for, and I was very impressed with my conversation with him. And I mentioned that I had been an original member of the Inner Circle. Well, back when the Inner Circle started, I don't remember what the name of the hotel was, but it's on Industrial Boulevard in 35. And I don't even know what the name of that hotel is today, but the hotel is still there. And that's where we met. And we would have these round tables in the Inner Circle. And there would be in the room, I don't know, a dozen of these round tables and 6 or 8 people at each table. And I remember Joe Francis was the guy that had started the Barbers. And Norm Stair was in partnership with him. And Norm was building the Inner Circle concept. And so I was quite thrilled, because my business was small, and I was quite thrilled the opportunity to get to have a visit with Joe Francis, because the Barbers in that day was a big franchise. They were a big deal. And Joe had just started doing some work in Russia, where he had actually opened a franchise of the Barbers in Russia. And I said, Joe, why in the world would you open a franchise in Russia? And he said, well, it's easy. You don't bomb your own stores. And I never forgot that. I thought, wow, how profound is that from a political point of view? Don't bomb your own stores. Grow your businesses everywhere you can grow them. So anyway, then I went on to Vistage, and it had a different name prior to that, and I can't remember the name of what it was prior to that, prior to becoming Vistage. But I had 2 different chairmen that I was in Vistage with, and the last one was Rod Johnston. And Rod, I was chatting with him about about some needs that I had, particularly at that time in sales management. And he had noticed that I had developed a perspective that I was willing to be coachable. And if I had really one thing that I could share with the audience today, if you're in small business, you need to choose to be coachable. And then you have to put yourself in a position not only to be coachable, but to find a coach that will hold you accountable to the things that you say you're going to do and respect that and please that coach, because we all do better when we're held accountable a little bit. So he said, he says, what you're looking for, Phil, he says, I can't do within the Vistage framework. He said, you need something that's more significant. And he introduced us to Steve Wilcox at the Resultants for Business. And at some point, Steve turned us on to traction. Well, when I spoke to Jeff, it seems that he's doing very similar things where they're using the traction model. And I would say that one of the biggest things that I learned out of that was, I was this entrepreneur. I was excited that I could do whatever I wanted to do and do it when I wanted to do it. And nobody was holding me accountable. And I had all this freedom, and I had big value for that. Well, when I started looking at this traction model, and I saw that this traction model was going to make me accountable to myself and to my coworkers, it was very threatening. But at that point, working with Steve, I learned that I had to learn to value being coached and being coachable and being accountable. And so finally I decided, well, I could do that. And at the point that I realized that, it was when I realized that this whole thing was basically the master day planner for the company. And of course, you always wanted to be accountable to your own day planner. And then it made sense to me for some reason. But anyway, that's probably the greatest value that I got out of all of those various experiences. And the other thing I learned is that when you're in a Vistage group or the Min Big group, you can learn probably more by helping someone else solve their problem than you can trying to solve your own, because it's interesting how you can see somebody else's problem with a complete lack of emotion and see the correct way to handle the problem. But boy, the identical problem, when it's yours, you get all wrapped up in the emotional side and refuse to see the answers. So by being in those kinds of groups, you just mature so much faster in your capacity and the speed in which you can make difficult decisions and how you can learn to set aside some of those emotional components.
Right. Well, it sounds like you could be writing a book yourself. So if you ever get tired of making acquisitions and growing your company, maybe there's a future being an author for you.
Well, there you go. I could be the dyslexic ADD author that wrote about small business.
All right. So again, reminder to everybody to put the questions into the comments field of YouTube, hit the subscribe and like button. Have a question coming in from David G. Thanks, David, for listening today. David, and we're going back a little bit to employee structure question. Do you structure your benefits for your employees for recruitment, rewarding, retaining, or primarily for some other reason?
It depends on what we're looking for. If we're looking for production employees, then we're looking for retention, and we're looking to know that they can meet the production requirements. So we do all of our production work. So the vast majority of our employees are production employees. And so we need to know that they can produce product in work teams and work well with the rest of their team, and that they can meet time study or exceed it. When they exceed time studies, then there's always a bonus that they can earn. And we want our bonus program to be very achievable. And we tend to be 103 to 105% above time study on average throughout the company all the time. And so there we're working on culture and retention. The most expensive thing we have is employee turnover. So in our facilities, we have 3 facilities, one in Osceola, Wisconsin, one in Chetek, and one in Toronto, Canada. And in the 2 Wisconsin-based facilities, we have a cook in each facility, and we have a lovely program where we work very hard to make sure that people are comfortable and happy when they're in our environment, and that they feel as though they're very appreciated.
So I teed you up to have acquisitions flow your way. What about somebody who's interested in working for you, given all that you've said here today? It sounds very appealing. Somebody wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about employment opportunities at the companies, where would they go, or how would they reach you, either you or the company?
If they just went to our website, they could see all of our content at coreproducts.com. They could see all of our information. They could take a little tour of our business. There's a video there that shows what we do. If it's production style employees, we're hiring constantly. If it's office and marketing employees, then they would get a hold of our HR manager, Bobby Woltz, and Bobby would be more than happy to turn them on to the correct person.
Okay. And then we've had a couple of questions about ESOPs come in, but I'm going to hold that just for a few more questions, and when we'll get to ESOPs at the end. So talk a little bit about your plans for future growth.
Well, our goal is to continue to build our sales and also to build our EBITDA numbers. So our earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And so back in the day, I was 100% focused just on building sales. Today, I'm much more focused on building value, and we'll talk about that here with one of these future questions. And so in order to build our sales, we've realized that the key is to build awareness. If you only have a few people that know about you, you can only sell so much. And so you need to get to the point where you're building awareness in a big way. And the new digital methods for marketing have created a lot of opportunity for that, but it's not gotten any cheaper. It's still terribly expensive to build awareness, but we're disciplined about it. We track on our weekly numbers. We track our awareness models, how much awareness have we built every week, and it's in the millions per week in order to continue to grow our sales. And then we have one new product line that just got introduced, and we have 2 other product lines that will be introduced in first quarter. In fact, if you want to see a great example of what our marketing team can do, if you go on to either Amazon or coreproducts.com and look up the TriCore Ultimate Pillow, TRICORE Ultimate Pillow, you will see probably the best work that we've done in our marketing department, because it's the newest, right? And so you'll see all the alternative graphics, you'll see the videos, you'll see the call outs on the alternative graphics. It's very, very well done. When we did the campaign to launch that product, I was so pleased with that. I told my staff, I said, we could not have done any better had we hired the best agency in town. It would have been different had we hired another agency, but I don't know that it would have been of any better quality. And so I'm very pleased with how that TriCore Ultimate launch came out. And it's really a great example of what we're doing internally.
Great. Again, TRI and then core, CORE, the TriCore pillow.
TriCore Ultimate Pillow. So
sorry.
the original TriCore pillow is one we've had in our line since we built the company, and that's a fiber-filled pillow. The TriCore Ultimate is a molded foam pillow, and it provides a nice firm side sleeping area. When you roll onto your back, it supports your neck beautifully. When you roll over on the other side, you get a nice full side sleeping area again. And this thing has a 10-year warranty. The fiber-filled pillows do function in much the same way. They just are more soft and cushy. So if you like a nice firm pillow and you want an aggressive, firm support, this is one of the best products we've ever made. I'm really thrilled with it. And of course, it takes a little while to get used to that kind of sleeping.
Sure. TriCore Ultimate Pillow.
TriCore Ultimate is the newest one. Yeah.
All right. So you talked a little bit about some of the acquisitions you made, some that worked, some that didn't. Obviously, you've refined your thinking over time. But when you look at, and you just now mentioned a couple of new product lines, when you look at new product lines and ideas, how do you decide between making an acquisition or organically building it out?
Well, when we're looking to buy a company, we're looking for something that has a product line that complements our product line. So if I all of a sudden started selling windshield wiper blades on a healthcare site, even though maybe I could get a great deal on buying a windshield wiper blade company, it just wouldn't be consistent with our other marketing efforts. So we want to leverage our marketing efforts with whatever it is that we buy. When we acquire something, it requires a lot of time, a lot of diligence, a good bit of cash, and other business restructuring. And of course, it requires causing the culture of whatever it is that we buy to become part of us. In our search these days, we're looking for larger companies, and we're looking for companies that would have some people that we could acquire that have some skill sets that we haven't had internally in the past. So we're looking for $3 to $5 million companies if we're trying to buy something today versus a $250,000 widget that's a startup, right? And so that's been interesting. In fact, I used an M&A firm for the last 6 months to try and find some interesting targets, and we have identified some interesting targets in that process. When we start a new project, then that's all an internal focus. I don't have to do the rest of that other work. And as we continue to add to our marketing department, we're able to do more and more. So with that Tricor Ultimate Pillow launch that we just did, you can see a fantastic example. And in fact, the sales met goals by the end of the year that launched. We ended up launching it a few weeks late. We wanted to launch it a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. We ended up launching it, well, actually at the end of October, and we ended up launching it a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. So we fell a little bit behind because of waiting for some packaging to arrive. But that has done very well, and we're quite pleased with it. Now, in this case, it's interesting because this new widget we offered first with aggressive pricing on our website and on Amazon's website, with our number one goal being to build our reviews on Amazon. Now that we're coming into the first quarter, our pricing won't be as aggressive as it was, and our goal will be to introduce it to our professional partners and distributors so we can pull it through the normal distribution channel. But we've kind of learned that we have to build a quantity of good reviews on Amazon before you can sell anything, because everybody goes to Amazon to read reviews on products. And so that was a little bit different. Acquisitions require cash. Implementing new products just simply require a lot more time and discipline internally. But we've built those tools, so we're comfortable with that.
Good. So, Philip, I've had a couple of different questions about ESOPs come in. I'm going to answer or ask you one from Lenny. Lenny also is a good listener, participant in the Club E community, and then maybe talk a little bit about ESOPs and how they relate to you and your company. But at a high level, Lenny's question, share your thoughts on ESOPs' advantages and disadvantages. So just kind of clean, hey, this is what you see, this is what you like, don't like about ESOPs.
Well, we are in the early stages of our ESOP, and so we are in what's called the pre-funding stage. But and that means that our ESOP currently doesn't hold any stock; it only holds cash. But that'll change this year. What I like about the ESOP concept in general is I really like the idea of rewarding the employees who have been with me for the long term. And I think to myself, well, just because I get to a certain age and at some point have to retire for whatever reason, it doesn't mean that those people are going to quit doing what they're doing. And I would like to know that I leave a legacy that is a good career for many of those people that lasts well on into the future, and that continues to pay them for the hard work that they do and the value that they create for the business on into the future. And I think, quite frankly, that the ESOP does that. What I also see in the business we're in is I see a tremendous number of private equity firms coming in and ganging these businesses together, doing roll-ups and ganging a bunch of similar kind of businesses together. And I never see much of a focus on culture and the things that really cause the business to work in the first place in those private equity roll-ups. So I think that the ESOP creates the best opportunity for that. And so as we're going into the ESOP, and I'll continue on here for a bit, but as we're going into the ESOP, it really changed my perspective on what is important in my personal job. And I started to realize that my personal job was no longer about building the sales of the company. It was truly about building the value of the company so that those new ESOP members would see a constantly increasing value for their investment of time that they put in. Now, in ESOP, of course, they don't put any money into it. It's all profit sharing that puts the money in and creates the stock. But when I start thinking about value, I'll give you an example, and I've got it written down over here to my right, so excuse me if I look quickly at my notes. But let's say that we're doing 20 million in sales and we're doing a 10% EBITDA. That would be about 2 million in profit. If we're worth 4 times EBITDA, that gives us about an $8 million value for our company, right? And if we had $3 million in debt, if you subtract that out, well, then you have a $5 million in net value for the business. On the other hand, if I focused on building the value of the company, I might build the sales to say 25 million, but move the EBITDA to 12. Or I might build it to 30 million and keep it at 10. Well, interestingly enough, 25 million and 12 is a $3 million EBITDA, and 30 million and 10 is a $3 million EBITDA. Either way, you get to the same EBITDA, but one way you get a lot more exercise in the process. Well, now if you built your company to the mid 20s and you drive that EBITDA to say 12% or higher, and now you may have, and this is the most important part of the whole deal, you may have driven your multiple up. So let's say that moved my multiple from 4 to 6. Now I don't know what the actual multiples are that my business would sell for. So this is just an example, right? But if I built that multiple from 2 million at 10% and a multiple of 4 to 3 million at 12% and a multiple of 6, well, now that business would sell for 18 million. And say I had to double my debt to accomplish that. So I moved my debt from 3 million to 6 million. Well, by moving my debt from 3 million to 6 million, boy, that seems huge for only a $5 million increase in sales, right? But if my EBITDA went up to 12, now if you net that out, 18 million minus the 6 million in new debt, you have 12 million. So your net goes from 5 to 12 million. And so I think that's incredibly interesting. If I'm trying to build value for my future owners that are my ESOP members, then I think the best thing I can do is learn to focus on building value in my business, not just the top line sales. And I got to tell you, Rick, I wish that I had learned this and had a clear understanding of this 10 years ago. I might have made a lot of decisions that are different than the ones I make today. So if you're a business owner watching this, learn what your value is and learn what you need to do to build your value and build some scenarios. And what you'll find is that your enthusiasm level will go through the roof if you do a simple analysis like that. And you don't need a business broker to do it. You can kind of figure it out, a lot of it out on your own, just using round numbers. But that's the most important part that I see with the ESOP. And so it's really re-energized me because I realized there was a much bigger cause out there. And boy, wouldn't it be cool if, let's say by the time I got to that much bigger number, if I owned only 60% of the stock and my ESOP had 40, I'd still be way ahead of where I am if I were to go away from it today. But the enthusiasm level for everybody in the organization is much greater. And you couple that with the fact that now you can speak to them openly about all these numbers and you can share the concept. If you make it much more complex than what I just explained to you, their eyes glaze over for most of them. But if you keep it fairly simple and use percentages for your budgeting and percentages for your numbers and share the bottom line numbers, then they understand why do you take more risk, they understand what the goal is, and they're more enthusiastic about playing the game and feel appreciated as an employee.
So obviously that communication is critical to success. Them meaning your team and your employees feeling appreciated, critical to your success. When you think about the transition you're going through, what do you think is the most crucial part of making this transition to an ESOP successful?
Communication. You have to be willing to have your information available for your employees to see. Now, if you share too much detailed information, it just loses them. But if you share good information that's easy to follow, and again, if we used almost exclusively percentage-based budgeting, and all of a sudden it gives us a great opportunity to communicate with those employees, and they're excited about it. It's really interesting to go to the company Christmas party and hear the things that spouses have to say to me about how they wish their boss treated them the way I treat their spouse, right? And so that's exciting for me and it's satisfying.
So had an interesting career, interesting beginnings. I'm not sure that I've ever started one of these interviews with Animal House and then talking about companies with over 100 employees and tens of millions of dollars in sales. So thanks for going through that with us. Given that interesting journey, was there a lesson that you learned along the way that you preferred to have learned earlier? Or was it the lesson about creating value and EBITDA multiples, or was there something else along your journey that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I wished I had learned about something similar to the traction model much sooner, and how to create a leadership team that's accountable to itself and to the model, and that would have been very important to me to have seen that sooner. But I think that traction model, I think that having a text where everybody uses the same text, it builds a common language, it builds a common understanding, it creates much easier time to be able to understand goals, and just having a really nice formal accountability process within the leadership team in the office. It's no trouble to do that in production. You can count the number of widgets at the end of the day and know whether or not you accomplished the goal. It's much more difficult to see that in the office setting.
All right, great. Thank you. We're big fans of Traction, using that at several of the Brimacombe Capital portfolios. And then Lucas Harmon, my associates, bringing us into that world. So we're using it for ourselves as well as our portfolio companies. So big fans here. So we're with you on that one. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Is there one kind of key takeaway that you'd like our audience to take with them after our discussion?
Well, I was a fan of listening to things that Zig Ziglar had to say back in the day. So he was a very prominent motivational speaker when I was first starting our business. And Zig said, you can get everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. And I think that as a business owner, when you think in terms of providing what others want, first and foremost, what do your customers want? What's the quality of the experience that they have with you? What do your employees' needs? What do your suppliers need? As long as you always have everybody else around you at a very high level at the seat, you will do well enough on your own. If you focus specifically on what you're accomplishing for yourself, you're kind of missing the boat. So I think if you can focus on being coachable, do what Mom said, and treat others the way that you'd like to be treated, and always remember Zig and his statement, you can get everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want.
That's great. I love that. Philip, super fun to have you here today. You and I have interacted a bunch for business. Fun to have you join us for the Clubby community here. How will people get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
They can reach me at Mattison, Mattison, at core, CORE, products.com. Mattison at coreproducts.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
And I know you live a great lifestyle between the hunting and fishing and flying. I'm sure you're having a lot of fun. I guess the last question here, I hope you're not thinking about getting out of the business anytime soon, because it'd be sad for them as well as sad for me to lose you from my network. So what's the future look like for you?
Well, I really enjoy running my business. I'm quite pleased to be running the business, and I suspect that the future for me involves further promoting some of the key people that are underneath me, and just really maintaining the dream. And my only remaining rock that I have is to lead, manage, and hold other people accountable. But the traction system pretty much holds them accountable to themselves. And then my big job is to maintain relationships with key suppliers and key customers, and look for future opportunities. And so I find that I can do that with a lot of fun, and I don't know. I think there's plenty of opportunity out there to mine at the moment, and I'm excited to be part of a business. And I'm very lucky in that my birthday is this week. I turned 64 years old, but I'm quite healthy. And one of the things about flying is that if you have to take a physical every 2 years, you pay a lot more attention to what kind of condition you take care of yourself in, and so I'm in pretty good shape and having a good time.
Good. Well, again, for our audience out there, if you'd like to connect with Philip, it's Mattison, Mattison at coreproducts.com. Philip, great having you today. Thanks for the conversation. And I hope you'd come back and join us again in the future.
Well, and thank you guys for putting together a forum like this. I think there's lots of people that could benefit from being involved in Club E and also in MinBig. And I really enjoyed the conversation with Jeff the other day as well.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Philip.
You bet.